Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today we are going to continue our session on communication, and today we're going to talk about types of communication. Previously, we talked about meaning of communication and its definition. Along with that, we talked about models of communication, and at the end of the session, we talked about characteristics of communication. Today, we are going to deep dive into types of communication. So guys, I have collected total 20 types of communication which in exam they have asked questions. So I have gone through like 20 years of question papers, and I found like these 20 types of communication they are frequently asking about. So in that perspective, this particular session is quite important, and certainly it's gonna give you one question. So let's begin. First of all, we have verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Anyway, we'll talk about these in our next session in details. So here I'm gonna give you just brief introduction about verbal communication and non-verbal communication. When we talk about verbal communication, we are basically talking about sharing messages using language. Now you might think of chatting or talking on the phone as verbal communication, and in some way you might be right, but it's also more than that. In the world of scholars and textbook, verbal communication covers all the ways we use language to connect. That includes writing, gestures, and even those emojis that you use to spice up your text. So what's the big deal with language anyway? Well, language is this awesome toolbox of symbols and rules that lets us express just about anything, from what we need at the grocery store to explaining, right? It's like a set of building blocks where the basic ones are simple ideas and the fancy ones can express complex thoughts or the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night. One cool thing about human language is its superhero level power to talk about, well, anything. Whether it's something right in front of us, a memory from that epic summer vacation that we had, or abstract stuff like love and freedom. Language has got us covered. We are born ready to soak up language, and while picking up our first language is a breeze as kids, learning a new one later on can feel like trying to solve a puzzle with a million pieces. Now let's get into linguistic, the science of language. It's like being a language detective, looking at clues from what words mean, like semantic, how they are put together, that is syntax, and even the sounds we make, which is phonetic. It's fascinating stuff that is gonna blow your mind, right? So language can be either the one nature cooked up over century like English, Spanish, or Japanese, right, or the brain children of some really creative folks like Esperanto, or even computer language like C++. Most of the time we are using natural language for our daily chit chat or deep heart to heart. When we talk about verbal communication, we are looking at the whole spectrum: speaking and listening, writing and reading, and even sign language, which is like talking through a dance of gesture. Each way has its own vibe and uses different tools to get the message across. So why do we even bother talking? Well, for starters, it's our social lives buzzing. It's also how we get things done together, influence each other, and even entertain ourselves with the stories or songs. Through talking and listening, we figure out the world around us, make sense of our experiences, and connect the dots between ideas. Let's say you're telling a friend about a weird dream. That's kind of verbal communication in action. You're using language to paint a picture of the dream, share a bit of yourself, and maybe even bond over the bizarre stuff your brains comes up with the night, right? Or think about a group project you're brainstorming or you're planning and coordinating, all through the magic of words. In short, verbal communication is our go-to for pretty much everything that makes us social beings, whether it's a heart to heart conversation or a heated debate or swapping stories. It's all about connecting, understanding, and let's be honest, sometimes just having a good laugh. Now let's dive into the fascinating world of non-verbal communication, or NVC for short. Imagine you're at a party. You lock eyes with someone from across the room, or you're chatting with a friend who keeps glancing at their watch. That's non-verbal communication in action, where messages fly around without a single word being spoken. We're talking about the power of eye contact, the way we stand or cross our arms, right? Or how close we stand to someone with the gentle or sometimes touching, the tone of our voice, and even how we dress or decorate our space. All of these send signals louder than a text message. Charles Darwin, that evolution guy, right, was the first to really dig into this in 1872. He noticed animals like dogs and lions weren't just growling or kind of purring for no reason. They were communicating with gestures and expressions. An expert believes that the silent messages we send through nonverbal cues can shout louder than our words. Now think about how your voice changes when you're excited versus when you're bummed out. That's part of nonverbal communication too. Your tone, how fast or slow you talk, or how loud, or these emphasis on certain word. It's all adds flavor to what you're saying. But here's the kicker: most of the time we are focusing on the face to face action, breaking it down into the vibe of the place where we are chatting, what we look like while we are doing it, and all the little things we do while we are talking or listening. So, the magic of nonverbal communication is in both the sending and receiving of these silent signals. Sending them out is called encoding, like when you flash a smile or roll your eyes, you're putting your feelings on display, hoping the person on the other hand gets what you're trying to say through the expression. Receiving or decoding is when you see someone frown his brow and decode that they are worried or upset. And while we might think a smile means happiness everywhere, culture throws in a twist, changing the game of interpretation. For example, in many indigenous American communities, a pause in conversation or subtle body language can say more than a whole paragraph. Let's bring this to life with something we have all felt. Ever had that moment when someone's tone just felt off, even if their words were saying, I'm fine? Or how about when you're talking to someone and they keep their distance, making you feel like maybe they're not that into the conversation? So, these are the everyday dances of non-verbal communication that we come across. It's not just about what we say, it's about how we say it and all the silent signals we send without even realizing it. It's a complex, beautiful way we connect with each other, adding depth and meaning to our interaction without ever speaking a word. Now, next, we're gonna talk about intrapersonal communication. Kind of sounds fancy, right? But it's really just a fancy term for talking to yourself. Yeah, we all do it sometime. Whether it's that inner pep talk before a big meeting, or the mental run through of your grocery list, or even arguing with yourself about whether you really need that extra slice of pizza or not. It's all about the dialogue that's happening inside your head. This inner chat is your own personal cheerleader, sometimes strategist, or sometimes your toughest critic, right? Imagine you're facing a big decision, like whether to take a new job or stick with the current one. Your inner voice kicks into high gear, weighing the pros and cons, visualizing different outcomes, and maybe even tossing in a bit of worry about the unknown. It's your mind's way of helping you sort through your thoughts, feelings, and options before making any move. You can take an example while you're doing your exam, right? You ask yourself, is that the right answer or am I making a mistake? All these stuff, right? Or consider those moments when you're reflecting on your day and you're replaying all these conversation or events in your head. That's intrapersonal communication at work, helping you process your experiences, learn from them, and even shape how you see yourself and the world around you. So, whether it's through spoken words, a meaningful silence, or that non stop internal monologue, communication is happening all the time. It shapes our relationships, our decisions, and even how we view ourselves. And the best part, it's all uniquely human, a shared experience that connects us in countless ways. Next, we're going to talk about interpersonal communication. which is all about the way we exchange information with each other, whether we are chatting face to face or texting on our phone. It's a super interesting field because it dives into how we talk and what happens in our brains during those interactions. So let's break it down into some key areas people love to study. There are six categories that you can see, like adjusting how we talk. Ever noticed how you change your tone or gesture depending on who you're talking to? That's us adapting our verbal and non-verbal cues in real life. Like when you're talking to your grandma, you might slow down and kind of enunciate more, but with friends, you're all about slangs and inside jokes. Then crafting messages. This is all about what we say and how we decide to say it. It's like choosing the perfect emoji to convey your mood or crafting a text that doesn't come off as too strong. Then dealing with uncertainty. Ever met someone new and felt unsure about what to say? That awkwardness can really affect how we talk and act. We might ask more questions or share more about ourselves to get the conversation going. Right, and sometimes being sneaky with words. This looks at how and why people might not be totally honest in their chats. Like when someone says, I'm fine, but their tone and body language scream otherwise. Then the push and pull in relationship. This is about the ups and downs we experience with people close to us. Think of time you wanted to be with someone but also needed your own space. It's that constant balancing act. Tech and chatting. Ever wonder how texting or social media changes the way we talk to each other? It's a whole new vibe. So when it comes to the nuts and bolts, how we communicate, you should understand it's a two-way street. Communication isn't just about talking, it's a back and forth where both the sender and receiver shape the conversation. Say it, mean it. Sometimes we blurt things out on purpose, and other times it sometimes slips out. Whether we meant to say it or not, our words are out there making an impact. No take backs. Just like a spilled drink, once words are out, there is no putting them back. You might wish you could unsay something, but the best you can do is apologize and learn from it. Every moment is unique. Trying to recreate a perfect conversation is like trying to catch lighting in a bottle. The mood, the people, the vibes, everything always changing. That's first impression. It's a one shot deal. Now let's talk about formal communication. So this formal communication sounds all official and stiff, but it's really just about how information travels in an organization based on the rules and structures they have set up. Imagine it like a game where everyone knows the rules and follow a specific path to pass the information. So remember, in exam they have been keep asking about formal and informal communication most of the time. So there are some types of formal communication like horizontal, lateral, vertical, and downward, upward. These are quite important, and for the past 5 years they have been asking only question from that thing. So in that perspective, you have to pay a little bit more attention. Now let me take an example of company or organization. So there is some specific way they like things to be done. This includes how people talk to each other about work stuff. It's not just a random chats over coffee, it's more like sending emails, attending meetings, and following what the boss or the organization chart says. So this keeps everyone on the same page and makes sure the important stuff gets to where it needs to go without getting lost in a game of telephone. So these two guys, Bartol and Martin, describe formal communication as the way messages moves up and down or side to side, following the company's hierarchy and the specific roles people have. It's all about making sure everyone knows what they are supposed to do and how they fit into the bigger picture. Let me tell you about the first one, horizontal or lateral. So one of the main flavors of formal communication is what's called horizontal and lateral communication. This is when the information flows between people or departments that are on the same level. They are not tossing messages up or down the ladder, they're playing catch across it. This is super important for getting different parts of the company to work together smoothly. Think of it like a team huddle where everyone's brainstorming or planning how to nail their next project. Imagine you're working on a project and you need information from another department. Instead of sending a pigeon with a note, you shoot them an email or set up a meeting. This helps everyone stay in sync like magician in a band, making sure they're hitting the right notes at the right time. Or consider when you and your colleagues gather around a table throwing ideas back and forth to solve a problem. That's horizontal communication in action. Let me give you another example. Think about brainstorming session, department wide meetings, and group discussion with your coworker. That's horizontal or lateral in action. Now, let me tell you about the vertical communication. And remember, vertical communication has two types, which is downward communication and upward communication. So in exam, they have asked question about downward communication and upward communication. Imagine vertical communication as the backbone of your company, big or small, where information, task, and even those urgent kind of messages move up and down the ladder. It's all about the bosses chatting with the teams and vice versa. Let's chat about how people in companies chat with each other, focusing on the downward and upward communication lanes. Imagine a big tree with the CEO at the top, like the highest branch, and all the other employees spread out below. Now, when messages travel from the top down, that's what we call downward communication. It's like when the boss sends a memo, emails, or even holds a meeting to let everyone know what's up. So let me tell you about downward, how information flows. So downward communication is super important because it's how managers tell their teams what needs to be done, how well they are doing it, and what the big bosses are dreaming about for the future of the company. Think of it like when a coach gives players the game plan, offers feedback after a match, or shares inspirational quotes to boost morale. It's all about keeping everyone in the loop and moving in the same direction. For example, let's say the manager of a coffee shop gathers the team and explains the new method of brewing coffee that's supposed to improve taste and reduce waste. She demonstrates, answers questions, and even shares why this change is part of a bigger goal to make the shop more eco friendly. This is downward communication in action, making sure everyone's on the same page and understands their role in the shop's mission. Now, flip the script and let's talk about upward communication. This is all about the flow of information from the ground up. Imagine the roots of our tree sending water and nutrients up to the leaves. In the workplace, this is when employees share their insights, challenges, and ideas with the higher ups. It's a chance for the voice of the rank and file to be heard at the top. Why is this cool? Because it means the big bosses get a ground level view of what's happening. So employees might flag a recurring problem with the cash register software at the coffee shop, suggest a new type of milk alternative that customers have been asking for, or even pitch ideas for a community event. This feedback loops is a crucial for making sure the business runs smoothly and keeps evolving. Picture this: an employees figure out a quicker way to handle the morning rush by tweaking the layout of the coffee counter. She shares this with her manager, who loves the idea, implement it, and even recognizes her initiative in the next team meeting. That's upward communication, fostering a culture where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute. So there you have it. Downward and upward communication are like the two main arteries of a company's heart, pumping information and energy throughout the body, whether it's sharing the vision from the top or bubbling up ideas from the bottom. Both direction keeps the conversation going and the company growing. Next, let me tell you about the diagonal communication. In exam, they have asked question based on that too. So imagine you're at a big family gathering where everyone's spread across different tables chatting away. In this setup, you have got the kids table, the adults table, and maybe a few others in between. Now picture diagonal communication, like deciding to break the norm and chat across tables, mixing it up with cousins, uncles, and aunts you don't really hang out with, right? It's like taking a shortcut through the usual family hierarchy, getting straight to the fun and interesting conversation without waiting for the usual pass the message kind of game. So it's completely different from whatever we have discussed, like downward and upward. It's a diagonal, it can go anywhere it wants. So diagonal communication is all about ditching the formal ladder of who reports to whom and instead having a direct chat with someone from a totally different department or level within your company. Think of it as reaching out across the office or Slack or email to someone who's not into your direct line of command or a team. It's about breaking down those invisible walls that we discussed, like downward and upward communication. So let's bring this to life with scenario you might find familiar. Imagine you're a software developer working on a new app. Normally, you'd be coding away, occasionally talking to your project manager or other bosses. But then there is this one feature that got you scratching your head, not because of the coding, but because you're not sure how it'll fit with what the customers actually want. So now through diagonal communication, you decide to skip the usual channels and reach out directly to someone in marketing, say a marketing manager. You don't have to pass the information one by one. You just go and directly talk to marketing manager. So you and the marketing manager grab a coffee and start chatting about the app. You're curious about what potential users are looking for, and they are eager to share insights from their latest market research. This isn't just small talk, it's a golden opportunity for you to get a fresh perspective on your work and for them to understand the technical possibilities and limitation. Together you brainstorm a few tweaks to the feature that could make it a hit with users, something neither of you could have done as effectively on your own. So this kind of cross departmental chat is what diagonal communication is all about. It's not just about making work more efficient, it's about making it more enriching and innovative by tapping into the diverse pool of knowledge and experiences that exist within your organization. By stepping out of your usual circle, you open up new avenues for collaboration, creativity, and problem solving that can lead to better outcomes for everyone involved. Plus, it's a great way to break up the monotony of the daily grind and meet some cool folks you might not otherwise talk to. Now, let me tell you about the informal communication. So, in exam, they have asked question based on that, and there is one term that they have been keep asking about, that is grapevine, and I'll tell you about it later in this session. But let me dive into the informal communication, which is all about those laid back vibes you share with your buddies, family, or work pals, or even the random person you strike up a conversation with while picking out your vegetable at the grocery store. It's like when you're gabbing about how insanely hot it's been lately, or shooting an email to your cousin about your epic road trip plans, scribbling a goofy messages on a birthday card, or just exchanging a smile and a nod with someone in line at the coffee shop. And sometimes you don't even need words, a simple thumbs up or eye roll can say it all. Now, when you're at work, this whole casual chat things goes by cool nickname, the grapevine. Remember that. This informal communication in the organization that is called the grapevine. Remember that. Picture this. You're grabbing a coffee in the break room and you overhear two co-workers whispering about the new guy in accounting who's supposedly a secret kind of karaoke champion. That's the grapevine in action. That's a gossip, right? It's all about those bits and pieces of news you catch through the office rumor mill, from whispers around the water cooler to the juicy tidbits shared over lunch. The thing about the grapevine, though, is it's like playing a game of telephone. As the stories zip from one person to the next, the facts might get twisted, turning a little white lie into a full blown urban legend by the time it gets back to you, right? It's like when you hear through the grapevine that the boss is planning to introduce a 4-day work week, but in reality, they just mentioned liking the idea in passing. Before you know it, everyone's planning their long weekends and the rumor has grown wings. So, this whole informal chit chat isn't just for passing the time or spreading gossip, it's the glue that holds the social fabric of the workplace together. It's those moments when you're not talking shop but getting to know the people behind the job title. Keith Davis found four primary informal communication networks. The first we have the single strand network. So picture this as a game of telephone you played as a kid. You whisper something to your friend and they pass it on to someone else. And so it goes. It's all about passing the message one by one. For example, think about when you find out a little tidbit about a new cafe opening up. You text your bestie about it, who then mentions it to their coworker. It's a straight line of chit chat moving from person to person. Then we have gossip chain. Now this one is a juicy. It's like being the first to know a secret and then spilling the beans to a bunch of friends at once. Imagine you heard a rumor about a celebrity sighting in town. You can't help but share it with several friends during lunch. That's the gossip chain in action. You're the hub and the news spreads out to everyone you tell. But remember, it's gossip, so who knows if it's true or not. And then we have probability chain. This one's a bit like throwing darts, kind of, blindfolded. You share something, but it's all random. Think about forwarding a funny memes to a couple of friends without thinking too much about who gets it. So those friends might find it hilarious and pass it on to others, picking people at random. It's like creating a web of messages without a clear pattern, similar to how viral internet spam work. Someone sends out an email blast, and before you know it, it's everywhere without any rhyme or reason. Then we have cluster chain. Imagine you're planning a surprise party. You carefully select a few friends to help out and swear them to secrecy. Those friends then each reach out to a small circle to gather supplies, food, and decoration. This method is all about being selective and strategic about who gets to know what. It's like creating a VIP list of information carriers who each have their own VIP sublists. So there you have it, a casual stroll through the world of informal communication network, whether it's passing along a piece of news through a single strand, spreading the latest gossip, randomly sharing memes, or strategically planning a surprise party. Each network has its own charm and chaos. Next time you're sharing information, you might just notice which network you're using. So guys, that's all in informal communication. Remember the keyword, the grapevine. It's very important because in exam, in informal communication, if they are asking, then they are going to ask only this keyword. And remember these strand also, if they go deeper, they might ask about the Keith Davis, right? And they might ask all these strand, which are like single strand, gossip, probability, and cluster change. Let's talk about next one, which is direct communication. Imagine you're just hanging out, chatting with friends or colleague. When you're straight up with what you're saying, getting your points across without making people scratch their heads in confusion, that's direct communication. It's like when you're super clear about what's on your mind or what you need from someone else. Now think about why being direct can be a game changer at work or even in your personal life. It's all about making sure everyone's on the same page. When you spell out what you need or how you're feeling, there's less room for those awkward misunderstandings. It's kind of like when someone tells you directly where they want to go for dinner instead of saying, I don't know what to decide. It cuts through the guesswork and makes deciding a breeze. Direct communication also has this cool side effect of building trust. When you're open and honest, even if it's about something tough, people tend to respect that. It shows you value the truth over just keeping things comfy. But sure, it can sometimes come off a bit strong. Imagine telling your friend their favorite shirt looks like a circus tent. Brutal, maybe, but honest. It's all about balancing honesty with kindness. On to active listening. This is a biggie. It's not just about hearing words, it's about really tuning in. Like when a friend's talking about their bad day and you're nodding, asking questions, and not just waiting for your turn to speak, you're showing you're genuinely engaged and care about what they are saying. Effective feedback is another cornerstone of being direct. It's not just about saying good job or that could have been better. It's about being specific and constructive. Like if your coworker nails a presentation, instead of generic thumbs up, you might say, hey, the way you broke down those stats really made the data easy to grasp. Great job. Or if you're feeling under the weather and need to call out sick, being straightforward with your boss about it, ensure they understand the situation clearly and can plan accordingly. So picture this, you really admired how your colleague always meets their deadline and brings fresh ideas to the table. Instead of just thinking it, you tell them, I'm really impressed with your work ethic and creativity. It's awesome to see, it's direct, meaningful, and makes their day. Right? In essence, direct communication is about being clear, honest, and kind, whether you're giving a compliment, offering feedback, or sharing how you feel. It's about making sure your message gets across loud and clear without causing confusion or hurt feelings. And when done right, it can make your relationship at work and beyond stronger and more trusting. Now, let me tell you about the indirect communication. Indirect communication is like the art of hinting. It's all about using those subtle cues. Remember when you think you raise your eyebrows, or the tone of your voice when you're slightly annoyed, or those grand gestures you make when you're excited. Instead of just coming out and saying what's on your mind, imagine you're trying to tell your friend you're not really into the movie they picked without hurting their feelings. Instead of saying, this movie is boring, you might yawn exaggeratedly or keep glancing at your watch. That's indirect communication in action. Now, why do some of us love to beat around the bush? Well, for starters, it's often about not wanting to rock the boat. You know, that moment when you're at a dinner party and someone asks if you like the dish they made. You might not be a fan, but instead of saying it outright, you go with a polite, oh, it's interesting, I have never had anything like it. Your facial expression and the way you say it might hint you're not thrilled, but you are keeping the peace. Indirect communication can be a bit like a dance. People might hint at what they want or how they are feeling without saying it directly. It's like when your roommate leaves their dishes in the sink and instead of asking them to wash them, you sigh loudly and start cleaning. You're hoping they'll get the hint and pitch in next time without you having to ask. But here's the kicker, this style of communication can sometimes turn into guessing games, which can be frustrating sometimes. Ever been in a situation where someone's upset, but when you ask, they say, I'm fine, in a tone that screams they are anything but not fine? You're left trying to decode their real message, and it can lead to misunderstanding or even arguments because the message isn't clear. Some folks lean toward indirect communication because they're worried about how their words will be received. They might fear upsetting someone or facing a confrontation. It's like when you want to say no to an invitation without offending the person. Instead of straightforward no thanks, you might go with, I'll have to check my schedule, even though you know your calendar is as empty as ghost town. But that's how you deny. And here's an interesting twist, indirect communication is pretty common in many parts of the world. If you have ever worked with people from countries like India, China, Japan, or many places in the Middle East, you might notice that they often favor a more roundabout way of expressing themselves. It's a cultural thing where being direct might be seen as rude or too confrontational. So saying no without actually saying no becomes an art form, ensuring everyone's feelings are spared. Now let me tell you about the continuous communication, and along with that we're going to discuss non-continuous communication. So picture this, you and your buddies are in an endless group chat. messages kind of flying back and forth, gifs, emojis, the works. That's a lot like what continuous communication is in the professional world. It's all about keeping the conversation going non-stop, ensuring everyone's on the same page and moving in a sync like a well choreographed dance. Imagine you're working on a group project. Instead of waiting for weekly meetings, you're constantly updating each other's on progress, brainstorming ideas in real time, and tackling problems as they pop up. It's like having a live stream of what everyone's doing and thinking. This way, everyone learns from each other, stays motivated, and knows exactly what's happening. It's like forming your own language where everyone understands the slang and inside jokes, making working together smoother and more fun. And because this conversation never sleeps, it's like a river that always flows with fresh news and insights. When something new comes up, everyone can jump on immediately, keeping the team agile and ready to respond to whatever comes their way. For example, think about how you use messaging apps to plan a night out with friends. You're bouncing ideas, times, and places back and forth until everyone is on the same page. That's continuous communication in action. But in work setting, it could be quick catch-ups, sharing updates in a group chat, or having a quick video call to nail down details. Now let's talk about non-continuous communication. This is more like sending a postcard instead of texting. You're putting your message out there, but you're not waiting around for an immediate reply. It's a one-way street where the messages is delivered but the conversation doesn't flow back and forth in real time. Think of it casting a wider net. You're reaching more people but in a more general, less personalized way. Like when you're listening to your favorite podcast, watching a documentary, or reading a blog, the creators are sharing their message with you and a whole bunch of other people, but it's not back and forth conversation. You're observing what they have to say, learning something new, or just being entertained, but you're not directly engaging with them. A real life example: imagine you're watching a cooking show. The chef is teaching you how to whip up a delicious meal, but you can't ask questions or get feedback on your cooking techniques. You're receiving valuable information and maybe even getting inspired to try new recipes, but the interaction ends when the show does. Both styles of communication have their place. Continuous communication keeps everyone connected, informed, and moving forward together. Non continuous communication, on the other hand, allows for broader outreach, sharing ideas and information with a wider audience without the need for immediate interaction. Whether you're in a constant chat with your team or tuning into your favorite radio show, each method has its own benefits and its different needs. Now let me tell you about the intra-group and intergroup. What are these? So let's talk about intra-group. So when we talk about intra-group communication, what we are really getting at is how folks chat and shares ideas with their own little squad. Think about it like this way: you have got your group of friends, your family sitting around the dinner table, or maybe your classmates working on a group project. It's all about the conversation that happens in these tight knit circles. Now imagine you're planning a surprise party with your besties. You guys are texting back and forth, throwing ideas around about the theme, who to invite, and what kind of cake to get. That's intra-group communication in action. You're all in the loop, brainstorming and making decisions together as a small group. Then it comes to intergroup communication. So this is when the chat crosses the borders between different groups. Let's say the planning for that surprise party has now expanded. Now you're coordinating with the birthday person's family and other friends group to pull off a bigger surprise. This is where things get interesting because it's not just your circle anymore. You're communicating across multiple groups to make something awesome happen. And here's the fun example to paint this picture. Imagine two rival high school sports teams. Normally, they're all about the competition, right? But then there is a community charity event, and both teams decide to join force to raise some money. Now, team members are talking, planning, and working together for good cause. That's intergroup communication. They are coming together, putting aside rivalries, and focusing on a common goal, which shows how powerful communication between groups can be. Or think about a classroom setting where smaller groups are discussing different aspects of project. First, it's just within their own group, tossing ideas around, but then each group present their findings to the entire class, sparking a bigger discussion. This transition from chatting within a small group to engaging the whole class is a classic move from intra-group to inter-group communication. And what's really cool about intergroup communication is that it often goes beyond just the chit chat about day to day stuff. It taps into the bigger picture, like how people from different backgrounds, sometimes cultures or beliefs, can come together and chat it out. Whether it's about community projects, workplace, collaboration, or even just understanding each other better. It's about finding common ground despite our differences, and that's something pretty special. Now let me tell you about the synchronous and asynchronous communication. First we have synchronous. Imagine you're hanging out with a friends, chatting over coffee, or maybe you're video calling someone far away. This is synchronous communication. It's all about being in the loop together in real time. You say something, they reply right back to you. It's like playing tennis. The ball keeps going back and forth without taking a break. This kind of communication is super interactive and lively because you're both right there responding on the fly. There are so many examples, but let me tell you about the video calls, which is a big one. Whether it's a work meeting or Zoom or a catch-up session on Skype, you're talking and seeing reaction live. Then there is this classic phone call. Remember those instant messaging too, like when you're firing texts back and forth in a WhatsApp group, sharing jokes or making plans for the weekend. It's all about that instant back and forth, keeping the conversation flowing without any pause. And on the other hand, asynchronous communication is completely different. It's more laid back because you're not expecting an immediate reply. You send your message out into the world and the other person gets back to you when they can. It should not like in a real time. So it's like leaving a note on the fridge for your roommate or for your wife or husband. You're communicating but not at the same time. This way there is no rush. Everyone can take their moment, think things through and respond when it suits them best. Now let's take a real life example, and email is the classic example for this. Shooting a message to a colleague about a project, knowing they'll read it when they can, or posting on social media. You share your thoughts or photos and friends leave comments throughout the day. And don't forget forums or comment section under your YouTube videos. You drop your thoughts and come back later to see what others have added to the conversation. It's like planting the seeds and coming back to see what's bloomed. So both styles have their place. Synchronous is great for that immediate dynamic interaction, making you feel connected no matter the distance. Asynchronous lets everyone manage their time better, allowing for deeper thought and flexibility. Whether you're in a live chat or sending emails, each method has its own charm, making sure we stay connected in the fast-paced world. Now let me tell you about the classroom communication. And remember, this particular communication we have discussed in depth in our next session. So here I'll just give you just some brief information about it. So classroom communication is pretty much like the way we chat, gesture and pass notes around. Think of it as breaking down into three cool types. The word we say, which is verbal, the body language we use without even realizing it is our non-verbal, and all the stuff we write down, that is written communication in classroom. When teachers talk, whether they are explaining the mysteries of algebra to one puzzled student or sharing a fun historical fact with the whole class, that's verbal communication in action. It's all about making learning easier and more fun, helping students hit their goals, opening doors to new knowledge, and building a solid bridge of understanding between students and teacher. And about this classroom communication, we have a depth discussion in our next session. Now let's move on to public communication. Imagine shouting out a message so it reaches people far and wide, whether it's through a YouTube videos or a tweet or a giant billboard. This is all about sharing your message with not just one person but a whole bunch of folks, sometimes even the entire world. From the ads that makes us laugh or want to buy something, or to the articles we scroll through on our phone, the information we stumble upon our website. It's all about reaching out to people in a way that sticks. And let's not forget about presentation that keeps us on the edge of our seat, or those town hall meetings that bring communities together to chat about that, what matters most. So this is public communication. Diving deeper, it's super important to know about the four main vibes of public speaking. First, we have informing, like when a YouTuber explains how to bake the perfect chocolate cake. Next is persuading. Picture a passionate activist urging people to take action on climate change. Then actuating. Think of those fitness coach motivating you to not give up on your workout routine. Then entertaining, like a comedian cracking jokes that have you laughing till your sides hurt. So each of these styles has its unique on flavor and purpose, whether it's to share knowledge, change minds, spur someone into action, or simply provide a good laugh. So whether it's a teacher using just the right tone to illuminate a tricky subject, or friend's gesture that says more than words ever could, or a catchy slogan on a billboard that sticks with you all day, communication is all around us, shaping our learning, our decisions, and our connection with others. Next, we have political communication. It's all about that buzz around politics, how information flies around, shakes up the political scene, and gets both the big shots and us, the everyday folks, talking and thinking. Imagine you are in a huge network of whispers, tweets, or news blast and a heated debate at the dinner table. That's a playground of political communication. It's how politicians and governments chat with us, how news outlets serve us the daily scoop, and how we share our 2 cents with our friends or even strangers online. Now think of politics talking to us regular folks as like having a direct line to the movers and shakers. And this convo isn't just one way, it's a full on exchange. We're talking, they're listening hopefully, and back and forth it goes. So the secret sauce to nailing this communication is like three old school yet super effective tactics, like pathos, we have ethos and logos. That's fancy talk for playing to the emotions, building trust through credibility, and laying down logical argument. These are the tools that decide how well they connect with us. Then there is this thing called strategic communication. Picture it as a chess game where every move with words and images is planned to nail a mission. It's not just about chatting, it's about chatting with a purpose. Campaigns are the bread and butter of political leaders trying to win our hearts and, of course, votes. They're everywhere, like billboards, TV ads, debates, you name it. It's all about getting the message out and making it stick. Now, let's not forget the game changer, social media these days. It's like the political battleground has moved into our pockets and living rooms through our smartphones and laptops. Remember when our PM rocked the social media scene, or how every politician seems to have a Twitter account these days? That's what we are talking about. Social media has turned into the go-to place for politicians to strut their stuff and chat up the voters, especially the younger crowd who have grown up online. From fiery tweets to viral Facebook posts, from Instagram stories to TikTok challenges, and these the landscape of how politician campaigns and connect has done to our whole life. It's more personal, more immediate, and let's be honest, more entertaining sometimes. This shift has made it easier for us to peek behind the curtain, see what these political figures are all about, and engage with them in real time. So whether it's through a hashtag campaign, or a meme shared across platforms, or a deep dive article in an online magazine, political communication is all around us, shaping how we see the political world and how we fit into it. It's a wild, ever changing conversation, and we are all part of it. Next, we have intercultural communication. And we have discussed this in depth in our next session, and we'll discuss it more there. Here I'm just going to give you the brief introduction about what is intercultural communication. Imagine you're at a party where folks from all over the globe are hanging out. You're sipping on your drink and getting to know people who were raised in culture completely different from yours. This is intercultural communication in action. It's not just about swapping words, it's like decoding a secret message where every gesture, facial expression, and even the space between the words holds meaning. Now let's break it down. When we communicate across culture, it's like we are all bringing our own self of symbols and interpretation to the table. It's transactional, meaning it goes back and forth. You give a bit, you get a bit. It's all about happening within the context of a diverse background. For example, a thumbs up might mean all good in one culture, but in another, it could be offensive. Recognizing these differences is key to not stepping on toes unintentionally. Here's a real life example to paint the picture. Say you're an American visiting Japan and you decide to show appreciation to your host by giving a firm handshake as you do back at your home. However, in Japan, a bow might be the more appropriate gesture. So, this little mix up is a classic case of intercultural communication at work. Understanding and respecting these nuances can make or break your interaction. Next, we have organizational communication. Imagine your workplace is a beehive. The bees are buzzing, communicating to make honey or getting work done. This buzz includes every bit of chat, emails, and meeting that helps the hive thrive. It's how goals are set, problems are solved, and how everyone stays on the same page. Communication in this hive can be as formal as a company wide email from the CEO or as informal as the water cooler chat about the latest episode of your favorite show. It involves not just the people inside the hive but also those outside it, like clients and suppliers, all working toward shared goals. Let's break down this buzz. We have formal and informal communication in organizational communication. We already talked about it. Formal might be the official memos and reports, and informal could be, think of that, quick chats you have with a colleague over coffee, that grapevine, right? And then we have directional communication. This is about the flow of information. It can move upward, like when you give feedback to your boss, or downward when your boss gives you instruction, or sideways when you're brainstorming with peers. Then we have internal and external communication. Internal is all the talk within the company, while external is the dialogue with the world outside, like customers or partners. Then we have oral and written communication. Sometimes you're speaking in meetings, phone or calls, and other times you're writing emails and proposal. For instance, consider how a small startup might operate. Communication is often more casual, and ideas and feedbacks flying fast and freely across the room. Compare this to a large corporation where communication might follow more formal channels and there is a clear hierarchy in how information is shared and flowed. Understanding and navigating these different aspects of organizational communication is crucial. It's not just about making sure the message gets across, it's about how it's delivered, received, and acted upon that keeps the wheels of organization turning smoothly. Next, we have family communication. Imagine all the ways families can yak away or decide who gets the last slice of pizza on movie night. It's not just about talking or making decisions, it's about how we all do in our quirky family ways. First off, we have the conversation, like let's talk about everything kind of stuff, or as the fancy folk call conversation style. Picture this, you're sitting at the table, you're talking about everything like from aliens to your aunt's recipe, so nothing off limits and everyone gets a say. It's like a round table where the only rule is to keep the chat flowing. Then there is kind of my way or the highway kind of stuff, officially known as conformity. Here think of a family where one person, casually apparent, is the boss of it, who takes the decision. They have got it covered, it's their call, end of a story. It's like when dad decides it's a no shoes in the house, then that's the rule. Next we have pluralistic family. This is democracy in action. Every person, no matter how young or old, gets a voice. Deciding on a family vacation, everyone's pitching in, from the kiddo who owns Disneyland or to grandpa eyeing a quiet mountain retreat. It's all about equal say. Next, we have consensual style. It's a bit of a give and take. Families chat openly, shares feelings, but when push comes to shove, the parents or caregivers calls the shot. Imagine debating over getting a family pet. Everyone's heard, but ultimately it's your mom who decides if you're having a pet or not. Next, we have license fair for you. It's like everyone's living their own life under the same roof, kinda emotionally doing their own thing, decisions. It's like it's your own decision. Like when you figured out how to do your laundry because, well, everyone else is doing their own, nobody is coming to do yours. Lastly, we have the protective squad. Think of it as rules are rules, with not much room for chit chat. Your parents set the rules and it's a one-way street. Follow the rules, no question asked. Like when you're told to be home by 10 p.m., then you have to be in before 10 p.m. No ifs, no ands or buts. So there you have it, a casual walk through the park of families' communication style, whether it's open discussion about every topic under the sun or a more because I said so approach. So each family has its unique way of navigating the world together. The last we have mass communication. We have also depth discussion in our next session. And here I'll just give you a brief introduction about what is mass communication. So when we talk about mass communication, we are diving into the world of sharing information and chatting with a whole bunch of people all at once. Imagine shouting from the top of a mountain and having millions catch what you are saying. That's mass communication in a nutshell. But it's not just about getting the word out, it's about what happens after. Does what we say make people think differently, feel a certain way, or even change their minds about something? That's the real juice of mass communication. Now, how do we do this? Through a whole carnival of channels. Think about the last time you flipped through TV channels, scrolled down your social media feed, drove past billboards, or picked up a newspaper or a magazine at a coffee shop, binge watched a series, or lost yourself in a good book or website. Each of these is a different ride at the mass communication carnival, reaching out to crowds in their unique ways. For instance, remember when everyone was talking about that one TV show's finale like Game of Thrones? Or when a hashtag trended worldwide, sparking conversations and even actions on social issues? How about when a billboard made you laugh with a clever joke or a magazine article opened your eyes to a new perspective? Those moments are mass communication at work, influencing our talks at dinner table, our choices, and sometimes even our beliefs. Let's break it down with few examples from everyday life to make a kind of interesting. Picture this, you're watching a documentary on TV about the importance of recycling and it hits you. The next day you start separating your recyclable from your trash. That's mass communication influencing your behavior. Or you come across a series of posts on social media about voting into the upcoming election, complete with heartfelt stories from individuals just like you. Suddenly you're not just thinking about voting, you're feeling the urgency and importance of it. That's the power of mass communication to sway opinions and emotions. In essence, mass communication is about connecting, informing, and sometimes transforming large groups of people using all the tools and platforms we have got at our disposal. It's a fascinating world that shapes how we see things, what we talk about, and even how we see ourselves and each others. And the best part, we're all about this conversation every day in ways we might not even realize. And of course, mass communication, we will have a depth discussion in our next session. So guys, that was all about types of communication, and remember, one question is certainly coming in your exam from this session. So thank you so much. In our next session we'll talk about effective communication. So for now, bye bye and have a good day.